property, housing,
skills.
This is Revolution, Stokvel, for every rural, blockchain,
Crypto, women, wealth and well-being.
podcast. This is Heaven
Revolution.
podcast.
We are coming for everything.
Greetings, Dumelang, Molweni, Sanibonani. Welcome to another episode of the Stokvel Revolution podcast. Today's topic is making Stokvels tech-savvy and transparent. Before we start and tell you about our exciting guest today, I would just like to remind you to please subscribe and follow on Spotify, Google Podcast, YouTube, and all other channels where you can support the podcast. And remember, some of the topics that we speak about here are from my book called Stokvels, How They Can Make Your Money Work For You, available on all leading bookstores. Getting into the business of today, we have an amazing guest today, a man that I really respect in the Stokvel industry, Tshepo Moloi, the CEO and founder of StokFella, an award-winning fintech solution that aims to revolutionize this 19th century practice of Stokvels into a modern and tech-savvy sector that allows the 8 million South Africans to actually participate in the economy. Tshepo, welcome to the Stokvel Revolution podcast. So happy to have you here.
Thank you, Palesa. Happy to be here and happy to engage you on this beautiful topic. It's funny you say you respect and I more respect you in this industry. I think you've done a lot and continue to do what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Tshepo. So this is a very relaxed podcast. So we're just going to be having a conversation. I know StokFella is very popular and you are also very popular. But I want more people, our listeners and our watchers, to be able to get more from your perspective about what StokFella is about, but most importantly, how the industry is revolving in this day and age. So our theme that we always ask everybody that comes to the show is, tell us, what is your Stokvel story? What is your background with Stokvels and your personal story on Stokvels?
Look, I think first and foremost, I'm a happily married man. I'm a father of 2 beautiful kids. And originally I'm from Soweto, born and raised in a township. And I think if you've been raised in a township, at least you should have some impact of a Stokvel in your life, or savings clubs, or funeral society, whatever it is. And back at home, we have a funeral Stokvel that has been running for plus 30 years. And I mean, I've got memories of attending that so many times. I think the fondest memory is the 7 colors, because it was always on a Sunday. So I'm going to eat lovely food. I'm going to play with my cousins, my family. So that's the fondest memory of Stokvels for me. It's a lifestyle where family come together, in my instance, or friends for other people, and you just enjoy each other's company. Yes, it involves the money, and it involves you contributing and having that trust amongst each other. But I think the biggest part it has played is building me in terms of understanding the true meaning of family. And I must say this, it was because of a Stokvel that I went outside of the country the first time. I think my first trip was to Botswana, and that was because my mom got paid out of a Stokvel. So
hey, Stokvelers.
So we went out the country, and I say that it's got so much meaning to me and so much meaning to many individuals out there in terms of important part it plays. I think at some point my mom used the Stokvel money to pay for my school, my varsity, so it's put us through life. I think now it's time for us to take it a step further as me and you, in terms of what do we do with this thing called Stokvels.
So with that fond memory, you decided to come up with this award-winning fintech solution, StokFella. Tell us the background of StokFella, how it came about, and most importantly, what does it do or solve?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. I had a great fond memory about that. But when I started StokFella, or should I say, when I started to be part of a Stokvel, now I'm engaging, because the fond memory is more about me passively participating, not actively. When I said, no, I'm going to become active and thinking I'm very smart, having these degrees that one thinks they are part of and knowing the finance industry, my Stokvel failed. it just plummeted. So, and I'm sitting and I'm like, why has this thing failed versus the one back home that's been running for plus 30 years? What have I been doing, or what am I doing wrong? And that's where the idea of saying, okay, StokFella came about, because I found myself working with Excel sheets, found myself calling people, found myself asking people to say, can you commit to your StokFella? I found myself people asking me how much is in our StokFella, So I found that it was very manual intensive. And when I went back home, even though it was manual intensive for my mom and her friends and other mini StokFells I visited, because I was just trying to understand what's the culture beyond just being passive participating, but being actively. I found that it's very manual intensive. You have to have the right leader who's very committed in writing things if you want to have a successful StokFell, and being a young upcoming entrepreneur at that point in time, I realized that no, it can be done better. That's where StokFella was born, to try to digitize this whole thing and make it less manual, admin intensive. And we're here today, almost 6 years later.
I always say, as a StokFella, and not just even as a leader or a person that works with StokFella, just being a normal member, StokFella has really made us StokFellas, our lives so much easier. And even from back in the days when there used to be like 3 functions out of it, we still felt like, oh, there's something that is specifically for us members as StokFellas. So it's very interesting that you took your personal experience and wanted to make it easier with technology. Interesting. There's a lot of talk, and I know I have spoken to you about this before, but I want to hear your recent view on it in terms of financial inclusion of StokVels versus technology inclusion, or maybe not even versus. What is your view on financial inclusion of StokVels and technological inclusion of StokVels?
I'm hot and cold about financial inclusion. I understand it's important, but let me tell you why I'm like that. It's because if you just look at the word inclusion itself, it comes from the Greek side of it, inclusio, which means fitting something into already defined, right? So inclusion, if you look at that, it's a defined box already. And then if you now say financial inclusion, we're including people in something that's defined. It might not be defined in the way that our African brothers and sisters done it. It's defined in a different way. I mean, you gotta love the financial industry in South Africa, is that it's very advanced, I mean, it's rated in the tops from the European standard. We go head to head. But does it work for our people? So because now we're trying to include our people in something that's already been defined internationally that might not even work for us at all. So I tend to pivot a bit towards what I call financial expansion, meaning that you just take away and say, look, these rules don't work. Let's redefine the rules, and it goes back to legislation. It goes back to regulation. There's just some regulation that's just not including us. And when I mean us, I mean South Africans, irrespective, black or white, but it's just not including us. And hence why you have this high inequality in South Africa. I mean, we're one of the top in the world. High poverty, high unemployment is because we're still trying to fit people in a set box that it was never designed for them, right? And you can take it back to challenges in electricity. You can take it back to challenges into infrastructure. It was designed for a certain output. It has not been redesigned or re-looked at to say, let's include you, StokVels, that are doing things in a certain way. But yeah, I mean, that's a topic for another day. I think ultimately financial inclusion means trying to include people in a set way. And I think StokVels already do that. I think the mere fact that I can be part of a StokFella and not even have a bank account, but I'm contributing because I'm earning cash by doing, a small job, skorop as we used to call it, or still being called these days, and I can come as a maid or as a helper and contribute to my StokFella cash, I'm already included. Think about it.
Because StokVels are a financial system already.
It's the lowest level of what a bank does, right? It's like, and I won't say the lowest level, it's got the same fundamentals, right? I put my money, I can borrow from a StokFella, so it's got the fundamentals of what a typical bank is. It's just done in a small way, basically.
Very interesting. You say that because there's a lot of, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of how can we customize our financial system to actually work for Stokvels too. I was saying in another episode that I know a group that struggled with another bank because they couldn't get debit orders out of that. And then they got the bank that can actually make debit order out of that, but that bank didn't have internet banking. These are basic things, but you find them that they're still not available for Stokvels. So which means a financial system has been built, but it doesn't really include the characteristic or the uniqueness of Stokvel. So there's still a bit of that challenge in terms of inclusion, and that's why I agree with you that there's work rather expand rather than include.
Yeah.
And then technology inclusion, because it talks a lot with that. There's also been exclusion and inclusion when it comes to Stokvels and technology. What is your view on that?
Yeah, look, I think prior we came in, and I wouldn't say that we design how Stokvels should be, right? I do think there were people who are trying to get to the game. They got challenges around creating a technology for Stokvels. I think we went about it a different way, slightly. Sometimes there's no unique idea, just a unique implementation that gets it right. But with that said, I think there hasn't been tools designed for Stokvels, technological tools. They've always been given a bank account and that's it, right? So they've always been looked at as a product, not as a solution, right? So once you start putting your hat on and say, what solutions should I develop for Stokvels? How are they living? What are they trying to achieve? Because Stokvels have goals. The goal is not necessarily saving is a way to make the goal a reality, but the goal is actually not saving, right? The people think the goal is saving, but the goal is actually buying property, right? Or buying a franchise or going away on a trip, right? So once you understand that, then you say, okay, how do I enable that? Right. And that's where now you decide to say, let's build tools around that, So one of the tools that we've embarked on building is what we call the Stokvel marketplace, right? And this is where we're trying to find out, say, okay, now we've enabled you to do your admin as efficiently as possible. We've plugged in banking in there. Now the question is once you saved, how do we enable you to actually do the job that you actually were? The purpose of you starting a Stokvel, how do we link you to an air ticket plane where you can buy an air ticket planes for all your members at a discount? What are those tools or technical tools we can do? And these days you can do a lot technology-wise. There's APIs out there that we can link to. So that's the next phase that we are at, basically building tools that enables you to maximize your goal, not maximize your savings. I think people get it wrong there.
Oh, okay. That is very exciting, I think, because that means you are building something uniquely understanding the characteristic of a Stokvel in order to be able to build that technological solution around it. Something that really is popular among other types of clients or types of customers. And this is what I always talk about, that a Stokvel client is the same as an individual client. That's why we need the likes of Stokfellas that are able to read us as Stokfellas in terms of what we need, so that they can actually build solution according to that, rather than a one-size-fits-all like most of the products that are out there. But that is, again, another topic. But what I want in terms of today's Stokvels or investment clubs is that what are the Stokvel administrative challenges that you are still seeing in these modern Stokvels that are investing in property and in franchises and in the JSE. So modern Stokvels, I know there's still administrative challenges. What are the ones that you have seen that these Stokvels are struggling with? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
administratively.
So I think at the fundamentals, the basic administrative is communication. So. Yes, there's technology out there to enable communication, but I think a lot of people haven't understood how to communicate, basically. For example, we get Stokvels that come to us and say, how do I send out a bulk SMS to my members to communicate something, right? Or how do I send out a bulk newsletter? The technology is there, but there's still the education side of how to use that technology. And why I put that is because people consume information differently. Right, so I might like an SMS, someone might like a WhatsApp, someone might like an email. So now you have three, and that's what happens with Stokvels, because you might have 100 people, but they never read, not all of them read your email. Only 20% read your email. In fact, you're lucky if you get to 30% based on statistics out there. So you need multiple communication challenges. So you find that that's one of the biggest hurdle that we find with Stokvel, which we are thinking of how to solve it, by the way, right? And then you find that these administrative-wise, I think the biggest next challenge is how to better communicate their vision, because or should I say how to enable the vision, because like I said, saving is one thing, but people continuously contributing towards the saving, they need to understand a vision. Let's take, for example, the people of Stokvel. One of my favorite Stokvel, right? Their vision was clear from the beginning. There's 5 years journey, and we're going to be, and ideally we should become a mutual bank. In fact, although I don't think there'll be a mutual bank in 5 years. That's another
Not with the regulations changes.
But what was clear, that there was a clear vision put out. So you get in there, you understand, you have a 5-year journey and you are trying to achieve something. I think when people come to us, they come to us saying, yeah, we've saved. What next? So we find ourselves in a place where we say, okay, right, let's now unpack your vision. And we do a lot of consulting with Stokvels, where we are now unpacking their vision, helping them understand themselves. And once you get those two fundamentals right, in fact, when you come on StokFella, we actually give you what we call a welcome pack that's got rules around how you can solve that. That's the nice part, right? But even though people don't read much, but at least you get a pack, right? And in there, we try to actually answer those questions and then walk you through the journey, because we know that once we tick those boxes off, 99% of your stock will be successful.
Very interesting. I always say also when it comes to StokFella, it's like having your private banker as a StokFella or as a Stokvel who's looking after your finances in terms of how can you maximize that. And with these modern Stokvels that are coming now, we definitely need such services, because they are so unique in the types of investments that they're going into, the businesses that they're going into, the opportunities that they're going into need a private banker. Because as you know, a private banker from a personal perspective is supposed to, in a way, help you create wealth. So my next question relating to that then, Tshepo, would be, how can Stokvels reach their full potential using the technology that is in place and the transparency that you have provided for them?
Yeah, I touched on that a bit, a bit like technology of better communication. As StokFella, definitely we do better transparency, we do better convenience, and security-wise from that point of view, where you don't actually have an actual cash in. Funny, on my way here, we were dealing with a potential client who approached us a while back, but their members didn't sign on because they still felt that they still wanted to own the whole process of administration, writing on the book. And then they went and took out money from the bank recently, not so long ago, for January, and they got robbed. So 150,000 rand gone, right?
I can't believe this still happens in 2022. Okay.
So now they're back. The problem is that they come to us at the end when there's already a problem, where we try to say, look, there's a better way of doing things. So the technology of security is already there. The technology of transparency is already there. The technology of better communication is already there, right? So this is where you now put all these things as a Stokvel and say, let's take advantage of this thing. And thank goodness for COVID, so to speak. It has allowed Stokvels to speed up their adoption and Zooming these days, So we do a whole lot of Zoom on a daily basis. So that's how they can take advantage of this technology, basically. It's there. It's now just learning about it. And if they go to our blog, we write a bit about technology they can take advantage of.
Especially the transparency. There's been a lot of distrust among Stokvels because of lack of transparency. People don't know where their money is going, how is it going. So that's something that you can use to build trust within your Stokvel. So this is my favorite question specifically because it's around financial literacy. What specific financial literacy you think Stokvel members need in this day and age in order to pursue financial freedom or wealth creation through Stokvels? There's not been a lot of somebody who can come out and say, I've made a lot of money out of Stokvel, especially.
Do you think they want to come out and tell people that?
At least from a stats point of view, there's not a lot of millionaire Stokfellas from using the Stokvel itself. Yes, we're definitely on the way there with all the great Stokvels that are doing right now, but it's something that is not common yet as a reached goal.
Yeah.
But specifically around financial literacy, what do you think the aspect of financial literacy can play in a Stokvel to financial freedom or creating wealth?
I guess it depends where your Stokvel wants to go, right? So if you're saying you're a investment Stokvel that looks at the stock market, then you need to start giving your members financial literacy about the stock market, about reading the stock market, about understanding shares, pricing, putting a put, putting a call. What does that mean? So because you guys might be in different levels of understanding, and also understanding how to read the markets, right? To understand that if suddenly a ship gets stuck in the canal, how does that impact you as a Stokvel? The things that you've invested in. I'm talking about things that has happened, or suddenly Russia says they're going to attack Ukraine. What does that mean from your Stokvel perspective, right? But I think that is established. Where I'm sitting, I'm saying that is almost established businesses, right? That you're investing in. So you're becoming a very safe Stokvel, so to speak, right? Not to say there's no risk in those things. There are risks, of course. But where I think Stokvel should play a very pivotal, important part is actually building the economy. So I think you should more pivot towards business literacy for Stokvels more than anything else. More than financial literacy is a result because of a business that has happened. So rather, let's now first pivot to business literacy. Let's teach Stokvels of how to understand business risk, how to understand how to run a business, how to take opportunities out there of a business, because there is what we like to call productive assets as StokFella, right? And productive assets is like a house. It's an asset that you can touch and it's productive. It's like a franchise store. It's like you going into Uber and say, guys, we're going to buy as a stock, we're going to buy Uber cars, right? Then you're going to sweat that productive asset because it's going to give you value. In there, you'll start understanding financial literacy because you need to understand income statement, balance sheets, and all that. But, I rather pivot towards that because that builds the economy, that creates jobs, that does so much more than just making another stock market richer. And you don't know, we might have a standoff tomorrow. Then what happens?
Definitely. I agree with you. What I like the most about literacy as itself, whether it's financial or business, is definitely the insight that you get as a benefit of being part of a Stokvel, which I always encourage Stokvels to do. If you are a property Stokvel, don't be just a passive member. Learn how does the property work and everything, the ins and outs of property. A lot of property Stokvels also bring that benefit into not just investing, but also learning about about property, which means you're getting two things out of your Stokvel, the investment itself and the insight and the education out of it. And as Tshepo has said, is that depending on what your Stokvel is doing, you need to learn and research within that, and so that you're not just a passive Stokvel member, you are learning about what you are getting into. If the type of business that you're going into, find interest in going into that business, so that you are learned and you've got an opportunity as an investor to learn while participating in the opportunity or the business are very, very, very important. For me, that still falls around financial literacy, because that means you are learning what impacts your money. And then basically around StokFella and opportunities. What opportunities does StokFella have for Stokvels and Stokvel members currently?
People like asking me that question.
Like, if I'm on StokFella, what am I getting?
What am I getting?
Can I get?
Or what can I get? I think it's quite simple for executives and members around transparency, security, and convenience. We've covered that. But what do you get out of more, right? So we have one of the things that we call the top 10 Stokvels, right? Which then, if you don't belong to any Stokvel, you can tend to look at those and say, I'm interested in these Stokvels. Let me learn more about them. Because we tend to interview those Stokvels or give out a newsletter of those Stokvels so you know what you can or what you're putting your money into. In fact, what we find, what is quite interesting, that we have Stokvels that come on StokFella to join another Stokvel. That's So I always joke like we've got a Stokvel exchange that's going on StokFella.
Like the JSE of Stokvels.
That's so funny. It's quite interesting because then people say that Stokvel, that's a property stock, for example, says, look, our income, our starting rate is 20,000. I might not have 20,000, but I can put a group of people together. We put 20,000, and I go and put 20,000. So you have that micro investment going on, So it's crowdfunding on top of crowdfunding, if you want to put it that way. So that's one of the things that you can get out. You can find out what are the best performing Stokvels, and if you can't afford that opportunity as an individual, you can start your own Stokvel on StokFella and participate in that opportunity, right? The second thing that you'd like to get out is if you come to us and say, I want to start a Stokvel, you actually go through some sort of a rigorous questionnaire that you sit down. I like the fact you put on, you touched on private bank. You actually give you a private consultant that actually engages you.
You've got private bankers, Stokvellers.
That understands what are you trying to achieve and how do you try to achieve it. And we have we've realized there's certain, call it a blueprint. Once you start ticking those boxes of a blueprint, we know that actually you are going to be a good Stokvel, right? So if you're starting a Stokvel, come on StokFella, there's certain questionnaires or blueprint that you go through, and then we take you on board in terms of saying, okay, now you can run your Stokvel. So yeah, that's what you get. You get a great, I like to believe, great customer service that you wouldn't get anywhere else, and you get opportunities of other Stokvels, learning from other Stokvels what they're doing. Going forward.
Very important. I'll tell you what my favorite part that is happening on StokFella that I like currently is definitely something that when I got into the Stokvel industry was definitely not happening, and I believe is one of the reasons why Stokvel industry got into a stagnant type of a thing of they're working in silos. There's only one Stokvel doing great thing, and everybody's just wondering how they're doing it. And now there's this collaboration among Stokvels of achieving things. So if my group cannot raise 1 million, can only raise 500,000, there's a group that I can join if the vision is the same. If we are both investing in property, for example, we are both in property investors as groups. We don't even have to join each other, but we can collaborate as Stokvels and say, hey guys, here's a deal. Let's collaborate on it and get the money that is needed there. You didn't have to raise it alone as a Stokvel, and everybody wins in such a thing. So that collaboration definitely eliminates that thing that used to happen of Stokvels working in silos and making it so hard to progress this industry into a bigger thing. So that is a big up that I like currently happening there at StokFella and Stokvels. Security, before we close off, we know in Stokvel, trust is a big thing, and as transparent as StokFella is, there is still one of the things, even though I'm not part of StokFella, and I always think when I say, hey, there's StokFella you can use, you'll be like, is my money safe? Is it? What's the security in there? What is putting it in the right wording? How secure or how safe is as a Stokvel is my money at StokFella?
We are safe as the FSP allows us to be safe, right? So I mean, many people tend to ask the question. The first point of departure we like to say is that we are an FSP accredited company, right? Meaning that we need to abide by certain rigorous regulations that is out there that even if a typical bank would need to abide by. So I think let's first start there, all right? To say that we have applied the best that's possible that's out there. The second is to say, okay, anything were to happen to us, someone was to walk in and say, give us the money, and which we don't have access to, there's insurance. StokFella itself is insured, right? And that's a must or required by, again, the regulation, right? So we can't run what we do if we're not insured as well. So your money is it's as safe as that. And also, we don't have access to your money, to be honest. It actually sits within the banking relationship that we have, basically, right? Because StokFella is a system that sits on this banking relationship.
So nobody can steal your money.
Yeah, so it's sitting there. So even if you were to able to get through to our systems, right, it's sitting, it's still disconnected to where the actual funds are sitting at. It's not connected to there. The systems are talk to each other, but you can't actually come through a system and enable that from that point without each member or each executive actually approving, because we have that 3-tier approval. So it goes through the executives to approve. And even after that, it goes to the members to review And then after the members review, then a transaction gets happened. So there's a couple of layers before even the funds actually move from the bank that we are now connected indirectly to. So yeah, that is as safe as it. And of course, data, of course, our software is HTTPS, meaning that it's encrypted. Any banking details you put on, they're encrypted. They don't sit on the same server, they sit in different servers. So we do what the POPI Act also allows us to do. We are POPI compliant as well. So there's many things that we do to keep your data and your money safe. And even with that said, right, when people want to hack,
It's like big banks get hacked. Every day, actually.
So yeah, I think.
But you put all the measures.
We put all the measures that has to be put in place, and we also advise our clients to say, don't give your OTP, your password to anyone else, because that's where arguably the first breach happens in any other banking or in any other secure platform, is that the user themselves is the one that gives away the information.
So safety and trust, very important in Stokvels, but StokFella has got you covered in that perspective. Moving away from StokFella and you being the CEO, just like we started, your personal view, your personal vision for the Stokvel industry in this day and age.
Yeah, look, this industry has been quoted 15 billion rand for too long, eh?
Industry should go up.
Man, you're a financial person. Just take 50 billion for the past 10 years and apply inflation.
Inflation gone.
We're probably sitting at 30 billion, right? So to be honest, my personal vision is to grow the industry, right? I want it to double, if not triple. So I'm in the business to say, how do I grow this industry called the Stokvel Industry 50 billion? That's my personal vision for StokFella, to say, let's grow this industry. And then, of course, to be beyond the borders of South Africa. I think any fintech company wants to be beyond their borders of their origin. So that's my next vision. Personal vision.
But the one that we're going to hold you to in this podcast is increasing the 50 billion. You heard it from here, Stokfellas. Tshepo's personal mission with Stokvels is to increase that 50 billion, and it makes sense. We've been in the mark of between 48 and 50 billion for many, many, many years. But now we've got all these solutions that we are talking about in this podcast that we've been trying to see how can we practically put into place. So we are giving you tools on how to create wealth and create this 50 billion industry beyond. So Tshepo, before I let you go, and I want the last word for Stokvel members, for people wanting to join or start a revolutionary Stokvel, not just an ordinary Stokvel, how can they do that? Whether it's via StokFella or just me saying, I want a Stokvel that will really be revolutionary. How can I do that?
Shucks. Yeah, that's a very good
joining.
question. Yeah, enjoy. So first go to our website, www.stokvel.com. I think first and foremost, if you want to start a revolutionary Stokvel, I think first ask yourself, is the existing Stokvel within the family? A lot of times, and that's what I always ask myself, a lot of times that we young people tend to forget about the old Stokvels and say, I want to start from scratch. And yet there's a baiting that you can, go there and say, Mom, do you have a Stokvel? The mom will be surprised. They have a Stokvel that's got 100,000. You're not starting from zero. There's 100,000, so catch the bait, the bait, and take home the bait and say, okay, I'm taking this on. I'm going to now convert your 100,000 to 150,000 or even 50,000 because they might not want to risk with everything, right? And convert it and make it more. So that's the first step, right? Before you do anything, because try your best not to start from scratch because it's difficult finding members, finding people who have money nowadays, and committed. So there's a lot of things that go into, but if you can get a Stokvel that you're very close to already, 2 or 3, you already have 500,000, most likely. I know my family Stokvel, they had about 150,000 when I came in. All right, so already there's a base that you can start with. So that's the first part. Secondly, I think look at industries, right? So look at what are the growing industries within South Africa or within the African continent. I think we've signed some African border things that we trade things that we can do as Africa as a whole. So ask yourself to say, okay, what are the things that if we put money into as a Stokvel that we can grow the industry or we can participate in? Whether it's technology, whether it's moving of goods, because a lot of people don't understand that actually we move a lot of goods on the road. Trucking. I mean, I know that there was a Stokvel called the truck Stokvel that got started. So you already are doing things that are what we call, I like to call them cash cow. Once you put money into it, they generate an income, And the franchise, again, if I go back to it as an example, is one. You've got a franchise that starts generating cash almost immediately. Whether it's profitable or not is another conversation, right? But what's important is that it starts generating cash immediately. You're not putting money and then you start wondering. So start looking at industries that are cash-driven, high cash-driven, meaning that if I put money in, I'm going to get something out, right? And then start taking on the baiting, basically. That's what I say, how you start revolutionize Stokvels. You're not starting from scratch, and also you're looking at industries that are highly cash-driven.
Thank you so much, Tshepo, for joining us. Thank you for the insight. Thank you for the education. We're definitely gonna have you back for part 2 because I believe there's a lot to unpack. But thank you for getting our viewers those tools that they need. So, Stokfellas, definitely you can make your Stokvel tech savvy and transparent, as you have heard straight from here. Your best podcast for Stokvels, the Stokvel Revolution podcast. Thank you so much, Galebo.
Unbelievable.
Property,
Housing.
Skills.
this is revolution. Stokvel for every
Rural. Blockchain.
Crypto. Women, wealth, and well-being.
Podcast.
This is heaven. Revolution.
Podcast.
We are coming for everything.